the biases that we have as humans, but we're questioning the biases that AI has. And I'm not saying that we need to question both. That's my main point. It's not that we shouldn't question AI. Of course we should. But we should also take a deep look in the mirror. Like, what is it that we're doing now? And is that safer? Is that better? Is that more fair?
Hello, everyone, and welcome to another edition of Break the Wheel. I'm your host, David Murray, here today with Linnea Bywall, head of people at Alva Labs. Welcome, Linnea.
It's so nice to be here. It's
Yeah.
really nice to be here. And great pronunciation of the name, actually.
Thank you.
We practiced before. Yeah, we practiced.
We did practice before. But I have, I don't mention this a lot, but I have a degree in opera singing on the side. And so I know. So I think I've had 4 different classes that were pronunciation classes, literally like 2 English diction classes, a French diction class, an Italian diction class, a German diction class. And so I feel like I have to pronounce things right if I studied for that long, because I don't do a lot of singing these days, I'll admit. But anyway.
I don't have the same expectations on me, right? Like, my Swedish is great, but I have a weird accent in Swedish, and my English is decent, but you'll have to live with it.
I think your English is pretty good. I'd say probably better than my Swedish.
Hopefully, maybe.
Maybe I'll bust out my Swedish later. You never know.
Please do.
Diving in, today's wine is from Colorado. So we're going to uncork and unwind. Cheers. So speaking of Colorado's governor just signed a bill outlawing AI job discrimination in 2026. Deployers of artificial intelligence involved in the provision or denial of employment opportunities must take a reasonable care to protect consumers from algorithmic discrimination. They must also create AI risk management policies and programs. They also must complete impact assessments for all AI systems, both annually as well as within 90 days after any modifications are made. Woo. What are your thoughts on all that, Linnea?
I think there's 2 thoughts. The first one is there's a lot of demands and it will take a lot of resources. But putting that aside, I think it's sort of a given. We need to make sure that it's inclusive to people, that people understand what's going on, that it's not just like a black box where a few people have all the knowledge and the masses have no idea what's going on. So in that sense, I think it makes sense. I think my bigger question is why we aren't putting the same demands on like non-AI things. I think, so an example, like self-driving vehicles, like there's some really cool data that shows that they're like 60 up to 90, even higher percent more safe than humans driving. But still the majority don't trust self-driving vehicles. But we're not questioning how good our Uncle Al is at driving before we get into his car. And I think that's kind of the same thing when it comes to AI tools. And I mean, given the podcast, like the AI tools within HR, I think it's sound to question them, demand transparency, but I would appreciate kind of the same demands for all the processes that doesn't include AI. Like, why aren't we doing risk assessment and being transparent with how good are the traditional hiring practices? How good are your, performance management systems? How are you promoting people? Yeah, list can go on and on. So I think that's my main thought.
I love that idea that we're paying a lot of attention, obviously, because everyone's talking about AI, and so a lot of stuff, and it's pretty much impossible actually when we come up with topics for the podcast to not talk about AI at least a little bit every week, because it's so pervasive, and yet it is kind of, I don't know if you'd call it a double standard, but yeah, it's kind of this thing that doesn't get the same scrutiny in other topics. It's kind of a good call out. And it's funny because so much is about psychology, right? I live in San Francisco, so of course there's actually a ton of self-driving cars, and what you mentioned I know is totally true. And yet, when somebody shares the TikTok of me, or the TikTok with me of the self-driving car in San Francisco going against one-way traffic that one time, it's suddenly I'm afraid to get in one, but it's illogical.
Yeah.
It's interesting.
But when Uncle Al does it, it's like, well,
that's just tired. Drunk Uncle Al. He,
exactly.
Sometimes he has a couple, but he makes it home okay, right? I wouldn't even.
For sure.
Yeah. we all have that Uncle Al, right? Oh my goodness. All right, jumping over HR Newsflash. So according to a new study published in the Journal of the Oxford Economics Papers, data now suggests that job applicants with AI capital or business-related AI expertise are now nearly twice as likely to get interview offers. Additionally, those with AI capital were shortlisted for job offers with wages that were 12% higher on average. Is this fair? What are your thoughts on that?
I guess I'm not surprised. And if I'm going to take the, bold stance on this one, I think the fairness is one aspect. And I would almost rather see organizations spelling out that, like, we expect you to use AI, or please go ahead and do so in your, when you write your resume or when you conduct the interview, like, use the tools that helps you shine, because that can, like, level the playing field. But I think I see less of a problem in the sense that, can we really evaluate the candidate? Because to some extent, like, I want to hire top talent, but where does, talent end and AI begin? I want people that brings their best and will do the best job. And if you're going to use AI on the job, I might as well test the whole package in the hiring process. So I think it's about, like, a mind shift of what is it that we're actually evaluating? And is it necessarily better that we're evaluating the person if the person is going to end up using AI anyways, and that's going to be their output of their job? So I think fair, no, but I think that's also something that the organization can help with in just, like, spelling out that you can use tools to help yourself. I think one thing, so when we do hiring for Alva, we always include, like, a work sample test. It's often a, like, smaller take-home assignment, and then it's some sort of, like, pair programming stuff, or something that you present and that you work together with us on. We don't care what tools you use to solve that task. It's almost like, well, if you don't use AI, then that's not smart. So, and then, of course, it might be helpful to sanity check your assessment with several steps in the process. And there's some tools that are less AI sensitive and all of those things. But I'm not all against that, except the unfair part, maybe.
Well, that idea of being explicit and just saying explicitly, like, hey, we welcome this. This is allowed. I think it's a really wise point that some of us don't even think about. And so many organizations, I think, may not even realize that the folks that are reading, right, like their job recs, for example, may not even think that something is allowed. So just making that explicit, I think, is it's healthy. And it reminds me also of hearing about what some professors are now doing as it relates to AI, because it's like, okay, what do we do now in the classroom? And actually acknowledging, embracing it, and in some cases saying, like, all right, your assignment today is to critique what the AI generates, and to share to share that critique, which of course they could use AI to do the critique, I guess. But
still, I think it's more so around leveraging it and using it, rather than just, oh, we need to assess something completely different, but then once on the job, then we want everyone to use AI because that's going to boost productivity. There's some things that's a little bit fishy to me there.
100%. Fascinating. AI, as much as we love it or hate it, we're going to keep talking about it. So I guess for those who are listening, is it more AI? Yes, there's more AI coming. Well, so Linnea, I would love to dive in now with the reality check. This is your spotlight time, to share a little bit about your world and the things that our listeners might find interesting to hear about yourself, about what you're working on, what you're focused on, anything that you want to share that comes to your mind.
So with the risk of going nerdy, I'm a licensed psychologist. So I don't have a traditional HR background. I'm the, weird person in the HR group. So technically, if I'm going to toot my own horn, I'm an expert in human behavior, but I know very little about labor law, but that you can read up on, or AI can help you. But then I figured that I would share then what I've taken with me from psychology and how I've applied that to, the people processes at Alva and in general that I work with. And it's a really like simple model that's called like the ABC model of behavior. So when you want to impact someone's behavior, which we very often want to do in an organization, we want people to run in the same direction and doing, the task that they have at hand and in a specific way and all those things. But then we can pull out this like ABC model. So basically what it says is that for a behavior to happen, you need to use an activator. That can be an instruction. It can be setting up a target, setting up expectations, but in some way like activating the B, the behavior. And then we have the C, which stands for consequence, meaning what happens after the behavior. It can be praise, it can be salary, it can be feedback, it can be someone yelling at you, or absolute silence from your manager or coworker based on, they didn't even respond to what you did. And what's interesting here is that approximately like 80% of what will impact how likely it is that a behavior will continue comes not from the A, but from the C, so the consequence. And in like organizations, most organizations will okay, we can have super clear targets and super clear expectations. And when someone isn't performing, we're going to say it louder and we're going to say it again. But they kind of lack the processes of really leveraging the consequences. So the best consequences is working with like positive reinforcement. So basically, humans aren't that far from how you would train a dog. And it sounds terrible, but if you want to teach the dog how to sit, you need to activate that behavior. You need to tell them to sit. And if they sit, they get a little treat. Think about that, but more corporate. So how can you create treats?
A cup of coffee.
A cup of coffee. Or that like positive feedback, or making sure that people feel like part of the team and part of the organization, that they see and feel that they are doing the right things. That is going to be a massive game changer in driving the behaviors that you want to drive in an organization. So that's kind of how we have tried to set up our people processes, of having a clear activator, meaning super clear targets, super clear expectations, but then really working on establishing tight like follow-ups. We have a concept that we call Friday celebration. So every Friday we have a like town hall where, okay, what are the small progresses that we've made this week? That's going to take us to, the long-term strategy and goals that we have. Making sure that people get like positive feedback and the little high fives and the feeling of being important and part of something. That is going to create more like a sustainable performing culture.
I love that.
That was what I wanted to share.
That's great. It's so simple, right? It's like it's a simple concept. Positive reinforcement encourages behavior.
Yeah.
I love that.
It does.
Now, I'm curious, like when we think about, because certainly negative reinforcement is very much a thing that we see, and culturally, sometimes when someone maybe is not sure what a positive reinforcing behavior, like they're like, I don't have anything positive to give, but I have a lot of negative things I could come up with. Like, what might you say to somebody who's, for example, let's just say they have a salesperson on their team who is, repeatedly doing something in their sales calls, let's say that, the sales leader's like, this, you need to stop doing this thing. Like, I imagine many folks might go to like a negative consequence there, but how might someone frame something in a positive way in a situation like that?
I think a rule of thumb is that the ratio between like positive reinforcement and negative reinforcement should be 7-1. So it doesn't mean that you can't say what's not working. Like, obviously it's not fair to have a feedback and not share that feedback. That's just being a bully. But it's about even if that person makes mistakes, I can guarantee that there are some aspects that they get right. And that, like, the manager in this case need to find those aspects and make sure to share those. And it's not about it has to be 7-1 in each meeting, but like over time. So every now and then you have to have that tough conversation, like this is not working. But don't forget too that if you want that person to kind of absorb that constructive feedback, they need to trust you. And then it's a lot easier for them to be in that like positive state of mind, seeing feedback as a actual help and coming from like good intent, if they have over time received positive reinforcement for the things that they actually do right. So look for the things that are already working and start from there.
So it's like a 7-1 ratio of essentially like, you know, positive encouragement or praise or kind of positive things for every one, maybe more negative thing kind of thing.
Yeah.
That's fascinating. It's like, you know, people always talk about, you know, when you're delivering that negative feedback, like to put some good positive stuff at the beginning and the end, the, you know, shit sandwich, if you will. So sounds like you're recommending a lot of bread in the shit sandwich.
And I think it's that hamburger model of feedback. We're just sitting and waiting for the bad one, and then we don't even listen to the good one. So it's more about like over time having a lot of bread, but you don't have to have
like an open-faced shit sandwich or something.
Exactly. Make sure there's a lot of bread over time, and then the toppings need to fit in there every now and then as well.
There you go. Okay. I love that. But you know, the behavioral aspect, I mean, I think it's so cool. Your background is so interesting. And for HR in particular, just for people teams, like having that experience and that background, I just like, that is a brain I wish I had. I'm like, I wish I had your degree. I could just go, yeah, that's awesome. Very cool. So then tell me now, like in terms of people misunderstanding, what would you say that people misunderstand about your job or the space or something you see every day?
I had a enlightening conversation with a friend like just the other week. So she works at this like large global organization, and she had been chit-chatting with a coworker, and he had like, oh, well, damn HR, they're just running, you know, the services of the board and the CEO and the management team. And her kind of comment, like my friend's comment was, aren't HR looking out for the little guy? Like that was her view of like HR, that they should be a shoulder to cry on. They should be there to like support me as an employee. And I think that the misunderstanding is probably that, like, yeah, we can do that, but HR is mainly about enabling a business strategy, and doing that in a fair way, sure, not obeying any laws, or yes, obeying, not breaking any laws.
Not breaking any laws, right? Sure.
Freudian slip. But I think that like the misconception of HR just being like the friend and the hand holder, but rather it's something that will enable the strategy that is set from the board and the CEO and the management team. That is something I think that a lot of organizations are missing out on. And to some extent, if I'm going to be mean here, some of the HR professionals as well, that they don't see that part of their function either.
So like maybe some of them may be over anchoring or over focusing on the individual employee support, when in reality the business is kind of the core need and the core function. Yeah,
to some extent, I think that's true. And it's not that, I mean, obviously I see it as the individual need. I need to take that into account and I need to care for that, but not necessarily because of that individual need, but because I need that person to pull like in the right direction, and I need them to perform for the sake of the organization. And the sad, tough reality is that the organization will most likely live through all of us. And yeah, so it can be about being nice, but for the sake of the organization.
I think that's super healthy. I mean, you're not pretending by any means. You're being very clear and transparent. Like, this is the purpose, this is the role, and it makes it, I would say, honestly, safer going into, for example, a conversation with HR to know up front, like, hey, my responsibility is for the business. And
Yeah.
if it is possible for the business to be successful and also for you to get your needs met, of course, like why wouldn't
Yes.
you explore like a win-win, right? But at the same time, if there is a situation where there really is like a zero-sum game where you have to choose A or B, that you should expect that there will be a siding with the business, and that it's healthy to know and be aware of that ahead of time. So at least there's no manipulation involved. At least everyone kind of knows what the game is that's being played.
Yeah, we're meaner than people think.
You tell it like it is. I mean, I think that's healthy. And what's really interesting is like talking with folks on this podcast. Actually, I've heard many different perspectives in this regard, in particular, right? This concept of HR is not your friend, or and some folks have very strong opinions because, of course, nobody wants to wake up every day going into a job that is whatever, soulless, or is like making the world a worse place or anything like that. We all want to wake up and feel like we're making money, but we want to bring joy to the world. We want to make, the lives of the people around us like happier and healthier, et cetera. But honestly, some folks just want to make it through the day, and they're like, I'm here for a paycheck. I want to get in and out. And there is no shame, if that's what you're feeling, right? I really appreciate the healthy, like, this is what it is attitude, and just like all cards out on the table, that you share.
Yeah. Let's see if I get friends or enemies after it.
Fair enough. Yeah. Well, with that, let's dive into break the wheel or break a heel. So I'm going to give you a few different examples. And the topic today is work-life balance. And you're going to tell me, is this a break the wheel, innovative, awesome, good, or break a heel, not so good? Starting off with the first one here. Number one, working over 40 hours a week. Break the wheel or break the heel?
So, I think for the context, I work in Sweden. Our labor laws are very different.
You're like, working over 20 hours, break a heel.
Stop it. No, but just, I think it is important context that that might impact my answer to it. But my answer is break a heel, not necessarily because we work less, because I probably work more, but I think there's few people that can be productive for more hours than 40 hours a week. So I think this like hype of working many hours, for most of us, it doesn't mean that we're like more efficient and that we're getting more stuff done. It just means that we're, turning even slower, and maybe we'll get the same amount of work done, sometimes even less. So for the sake of like productivity, then it's the heel.
Mm-hmm. And we talk about like incentives and behaviors, right? If like that's what you're tracking and that's what you're monitoring and that's what you're caring about, as opposed to whatever the output is, you may not get what you want. So good call. That aligns with me. All right. Next, taking mental health days. Break the wheel or break a heel?
I mean, I'm a psychologist. That's a big wheel. Go for it.
What if you're broken all the time? Like, what if like your mental health is always broken?
Well, then you probably need more help.
Well, that's fair. That's rational. That's logical. Okay, fair enough. All right. Next, working before 8 a.m. or after 6 p.m.
I think this one was a tricky one. I'm going to say it's break the wheel, but with a caveat of, I think it depends on your like life situation and circadian rhythm. So, I mean, some people are naturally like morning people and some people are evening people. And it's actually like there are differences. Most of us are more productive in the morning, but not all of us. That in combination with, as I said, like life situations. So I have small kids. I leave early to pick them up, and then I get to hang out with them. And, there's chaos and food everywhere and everyone's screaming, but also happy and giggling. And then when they go to bed, I get another hour of work in, because that's how I get my life to work. So I think if we still cap it on like not more hours on the sake of working before and after to get more hours in, but rather like adapting to when you perform your best and your life situation, all for it.
Makes sense. The nuances matter. All right.
It does.
Next, taking therapy or coaching appointments during the workday. Break a wheel or break a heel?
I mean, break a wheel, of course. I think it's and for this, like, it's more important that they happen than when they happen. So if that means that you take an hour away from work and you do better work because of it, great.
What if, and this is me just throwing a wrench in, what if you have a company meeting at 9 a.m. every day and there's a therapist that you think is amazing and they're only available at 9 a.m. during that meeting?
Then you need to find another therapist.
Oh,
there's going to be a second one that's also good.
That's fair.
I think, and I think it goes back to kind of what we talked about, like the reality of like who does HR serve.
Yeah.
But if you have obligations, I think you should absolutely like invest in yourself, care for yourself, but not on the cost of like your team. So if the team meeting is worse because you're not there, you have information that they need, then you're putting them in a poor situation. And I don't think that's fair to the people that you work with.
It's fair. Absolutely fair. All right. Last one. Going out of the office during the workday to pick up children from school. Break the wheel, break a heel.
I do this every other day. Either me or my husband does this. So it's break the wheel. I leave at work 3:30 maybe and go pick up the kids.
Okay.
And play with them and then work a little in the evening.
There you go. And life is life. And that's cool. Awesome.
Yeah.
All right.
Yeah.
Well, speaking of wheel breakers, the wheel breaker of the week. Oh, I hope nobody writes in after I say this, but the wheel breaker of the week is the White House. And the White House recently unveiled its principles to protect workers from the risks of AI. So setting politics aside, that seems like a good thing to do, right? Whoever's in the White House, that seems like a good thing to do. The principles include centering worker empowerment, ethically developing AI, establishing AI governance and human oversight, ensuring transparency in AI use, protecting labor and employment rights, using AI to enable workers, supporting workers impacted by AI, and ensuring responsible use of worker data. What are your thoughts on that?
I think it goes back to what we talked about in the beginning, where like it will absolutely be a blocker for like smaller startups, organizations that have fewer resources. It can be a like blocker in fast development, but I think it's worth it. But going back to, but why are we only putting these demands on the new things? Why aren't we looking at like how things are currently working? I mean, I've been for my entire career worked in the assessment industry. So with personality assessment, logic assessment, structured interviews, how to really like, nail hiring. And just an example from that world where I think we're so scared to introduce something and we want to make sure that there's people in the feedback loop and the humans. We can only trust AI if there's humans involved. But if you take a like hiring take on hiring without AI, so an average recruiter spends about 7-ish seconds on screening a CV. What you can do in 7 seconds is basically looking at like some logos, some titles. You don't read like what you actually did in that position or a little intro where you talk a little bit about yourself and your qualities. You just like look at the basics. And what's interesting there is like the stuff that you can pick out from a CV, it's not even information that can predict job performance. So we're basing our hiring decisions on like biased data where there's some crazy numbers where you see like women need to send in like 30% more applications than men. People of color have to send in 50% more applications than white. This is I guess, funniest one is that the group managers are actually taller than non-managers. And it's not that you grow an inch when you're promoted.
Right.
Like you might, stand up straight, but you're not. We tend to favor people that are taller for manager positions. So we have all these like human errors, and we're not talking about that. We're not questioning the biases that we have as humans, but we're questioning the biases that AI has. And I'm not saying that we need to question both. That's my main point. It's not that we shouldn't question AI. Of course we should. But we should also take a deep look in the mirror. Like, what is it that we're doing now? And is that safer? Is that better? Is that more fair? And most often it's not.
Well, one benefit, I guess, from working remotely is that you don't know how tall people are. So maybe.
So good.
Right? I imagine if
So
you compare.
good.
Haven't we all had that reaction, right? When you go to that in-person like event after working with somebody for a year and you go and you're like, oh my gosh, I thought you were like 5'5" and you're like 6'7", or like, oh my gosh, I thought that you were my height and you were actually like, 4'11". It's just like, and there's nothing wrong with that, but it's just like your vision of who this person is. It's just like transformed. By the
do you automatically then want to promote them, the tall people?
I mean, it's interesting to ask oneself, like, what do I think differently about this person now that their height differs, right? It's fascinating.
Manager material. Manager
material. That's right. What is the 6'5" trust fund something rather? What's that song?
Blue Eyes.
Gosh. Yeah, Blue Eyes. Thank you. Oh my goodness. Oy vey. All right. With that, let's get into something a little meatier here. Some wisdom on the rocks. Will you share with us a key piece of HR wisdom, or maybe even a truth bomb? Focusing on a solution rather than the problem. What's your wisdom on the rocks for us today?
Then I will stick to hiring and say stop using cover letters altogether. So a cover letter, there's really interesting research that's like clearly shows that a cover letter does not predict job performance. It has like no correlation with what a cover letter looks like and how someone will act and perform on the job. So basically, it's just a total waste of candidates' time. It's a total waste of organization time where we need to read through these letters that doesn't, like, they provide us with information, but not information that we can actually use. So focusing on the solution rather than the problem, just don't demand them. Just stop. It will save everyone time, and you will still not have like worse quality of the data to make an informed decision. You will actually have less noise and hopefully more relevant data. So nay to cover letters.
Amen. I mean, if you're sending cover letters in 2024, yeah, I mean, well, I guess maybe some of this is cultural, maybe there's certain industries, et cetera, but it's not a thing in tech these days, at least from what I see. So I support that wisdom. Good wisdom. All right.
Good.
All right. Next, some wisdom for me. This is the what should I have done segment. So I'm going to share with you something in my life that is true. And I won't tell you what I did, but I'm going to ask you what I should have done. And then I'll tell you what I did. All right. You ready?
I'm ready.
All right. So this is, as I often do, the company shall remain nameless. The person, the boss, et cetera, shall remain nameless. But I will say this was a job in which I was not particularly fond of the CEO. And it was, kind of I won't say that much else about the organization. What I will say is I was in a room with the CEO for a business development conversation. And I was mostly silent. I was basically supportive on the work side as kind of just more somebody helping to make this partnership happen if, from an implementation standpoint, were things to go through. And as I was watching the CEO interacting with the main person at this company, the person had asked if all of the users on our platform were organic. And I knew that they weren't, that they were actually driven by another biz dev partnership. And the CEO, when asked that question, he just said, yeah, they're all organic. And so, of course, in my brain, my brain is exploding on the inside, but I'm also recognizing that this is a big, business opportunity, but culture trickles from the top down, but so anyways, that was the situation. That's what happened. And the question is, what should I have done?
That's so tricky. Okay, I think in general, I'm the biggest coward, so I don't even know if I would follow my own advice. But I think the only realistic thing to do is actually call the person out on it. And then how do you do that? Because you can do that in so many ways. I would curiously explore, okay, when you said that, is that really the case?
Would you do this
I would,
in the conversation or like
no,
afterwards?
no, afterwards.
Okay.
In the conversation, I would smile and wave.
Okay.
But afterwards, just like, hey, can we just take a few minutes? I was wondering about this. What are your thoughts? Like letting that person speak first. Because maybe there's like, well, there could be information that, I'm not aware of, or they said that for this reason or whatever. But like getting them to ask or talk first. And then I would share feedback in a like subjective way, meaning like when you said that made me feel. Because I think the danger can be when you like, oh, when you say that, that's just whack and that's wrong. And when they found out, they're going to be pissed, or like just going out about like, this is what I think is the reality that's going to happen. But more so like, okay, I felt or I experienced, because that's not something that someone can take away from you. So it's more honest, but also a little bit less, I don't want to say scary, but less dramatic. So focusing on the behavior that you did, how did that made me feel? And, insert maybe like I was wondering, or I felt a bit insecure, or I felt a bit uncertain of how I should answer to those questions in a coming call or something like that. Okay.
Interesting.
Again,
now you want to know what I did?
I don't even know if I would dare to follow my advice. So what did you do?
Well, I'll say that, spoiler alert, I definitely in the meeting did not say anything. So it's totally fair, right? I didn't like publicly shame him or anything.
Mm-hmm.
So this was earlier in my career. And it's interesting because when I imagine myself like taking the advice that you mentioned, I actually can see like one version of a CEO that I worked with who I would feel comfortable doing that. And it would be like a seek to understand kind of situation. And like, maybe there's the meaning of the word was, different between us, maybe, and I think I would have done that. In this situation, it was someone for whom I did not feel a lot of psychological safety. And I didn't want to get fired. And so I said nothing. I kept my mouth shut the whole time. The deal actually did not go through. So in the end, I don't know if I would have felt guilt, or I don't know how I would have felt. Sometimes like, because, if you believe in your product and you think that you're adding value and you believe that actually like a biz dev partnership, would make things better. Like there are some folks that might say a situation like that, the quote unquote, the ends justify the means. I don't know if I would fully be on board for that, but, long story short, I didn't have the psychological safety. I said nothing. And so I guess sometimes in situations where like somebody's in a situation where they're something they see happening is not, not good. Sometimes people don't feel comfortable saying anything, and it's not your responsibility. It's not your fault. Like you don't got to put yourself and your job and everything on the line just because you're like, oh, like sometimes you got to protect yourself. So yeah, that's what I did.
I just really agree. And I think it's such an important learning for all the people listening, all the people that have managerial positions or like just leadership positions, that if you don't invest the time and effort in creating that psychological safety, you're going to end up with individuals not daring to speak up, not raising the questions. And then it's all you, like all the decisions will be based on how good you are. And that's scary. So I don't even know if I would have dared to do it, but I think in the best of reality or the best of worlds, that would be a scenario where you could actually ask the questions, share the feedback, but it's a two-way partnership, right? And
totally.
If there's not the trust, then it's going to be really difficult.
Exactly. And you might even spend, a lot of time and energy creating a really healthy, psychologically safe culture, but there may just still be individuals for, whether it be related to privilege or lack thereof or whatever, that just still are not going to feel that safety. And, it's like there's c'est la vie,
Yeah.
C'est la vie.
Yeah.
Awesome.
Yeah.
All right. Well, changing gears. So the horror story of the week, do you have a real life horror story or any kind of little story that comes to mind that you want to tell the audience?
There's so many. I think so. I mean, when I joined Alva, I was like employee number 14. So I joined like super early, and then we scaled the organization, and we were, 80-ish people at the most. And we did that over like a short period of time. So we probably did all the mistakes in the book that all tech scale-ups ever did, ever. But I think one to highlight related to HR was that I think at one point we had really aggressive targets, and we added a lot of people in our like sales teams, for instance, but in all teams. But we had, for instance, we added a like country manager and a team around that person. So it was like a new market, a new team, a new manager. And on top of that, the like manager's manager were on parental leave. And in Sweden, those goes on for like a long time.
Like 1 year? I'm just kidding.
Exactly. No, actually 1 year.
Wait, what?
Yes.
I was making a joke. Oh my Lord. Wow. I need to have more babies. No. Wow. That's wild. That's wild.
I know.
1 year. It's a long
I know.
time. Okay.
It's fantastic. But it's a bit of an issue when you're scaling an organization. And the problem that we really did was just not having the close feedback loop of, course correction and being explicit with what are the expectations, how do we do it. So I think that the biggest learning was that it was great people. They were working really, really hard, but maybe not in the direction or the way that was needed. And I think that the biggest learning was just to be way more outspoken with the expectations. And we've updated a lot of our like practices since then. So like how does the onboarding process look, where we spent more time setting the expectations of, how should we collaborate? That's one meeting. And then it's like, what are the expectations? What are the targets for you during your ramp period? That's another session. And then constantly like iterating and evaluating that to make sure that you're moving in the right direction, because it should never be a surprise if you're doing well or not. So that was just, I guess, unfortunately, a classic growing too fast, messy, horror story. And then the learning was just like be way more explicit with what you're expecting. Put it in print, shout it from the rooftops, and constantly go back to it. So kind of, go back to the ABC model, have that super clear A, but also make sure that the C, the consequences, that there is a close follow-up and close feedback loop to
A, B,
to
C,
give
C,
people,
C, 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 C,
C, so many C's. Just to give people the right prerequisites to do a really good job.
Makes sense. And sometimes, right, they say like you have to say the same thing 3 different times in 3 different formats for people to actually be able to absorb what you're saying. Like it resonates with me. My goodness.
It does. It does.
All right. Well, any water cooler whispers? So any word on the street or things that you've heard, especially given your background, which I think is fascinating. Any water cooler whispers you want to share with the audience?
I think this then goes back to my own like professional background. So I've worked with like psychometrics for my entire career. So I'm a bit of an assessment nerd. And I think the whispers would probably be from like the way that researchers are probably whispering behind our backs, because there's so much research showing that like using personality assessment, logic ability assessment is a really strong predictor for job performance, especially if you use it like early on in a hiring process. It can be something that truly helps us find like the hidden gems and the needle in the haystack, not based on what someone has done. So going back to like the CV screen or the stupid cover letter, but rather on like who someone is as an individual, like finding those context stable traits that actually impacts our ambition, how we collaborate, how fast we learn, how fast we adapt, those aspects. So I think the research has like shown that for like years and decades, but it's still not something that a lot of organizations are putting to practice in the right way. So a lot of organizations are using psychometrics like at the very end of a process where, okay, we screened some CVs and we've done some interviews, and now we're going to just like have this final step of quality checking or sanity checking. What is a much more like efficient and accurate way to use psychometrics is like flipping the process around, where screening candidates not with CVs or cover letters, but rather with psychometrics, and then based on like who has to write, like who can, by being themselves, be awesome. Now let's focus on those individuals and dive deeper through like structured interviews, work sample tests, and to really find if they have like the readiness and the knowledge and experience, but taking that second, because it's going to be not only a more like accurate process, but also like we've seen so many results of organizations increasing their retention, increasing their diversity, being a much more like fair process, and at the same time increasing like accuracy in who they hire. So I think researchers are frustrated. We've known this for so long, but it's not like put in practice in a way that's actually like helping organizations.
I think that's fascinating. In the early days of Confirm, we were reading like some of this research, right? So I remember University of Iowa, Schmidt, I guess, who passed away a few years back, but he did this study of 100 studies, this meta study, and finding that the version of the study that we read was that like the two most predictive things were a general mental ability test and an integrity test, and that they were more predictive than whatever all this other stuff that people do. And when we would, in our early days when we were still figuring out what we were doing as a business, we thought, well, maybe we should do something like that. And so we would have conversations with CHROs, with business leaders about like, hey, this is what the data shows. Like, does that influence, what you're going to do in your hiring process? And they would all be like, oh, this data is so interesting. But no, we're going to keep doing the same thing that we've been doing. And like, I think there's a cultural thing there, right? It's just like some people just aren't used to, being asked to take a test in the beginning, and some might even take offense to it, even if it is better.
And what's interesting is I think a lot of candidates actually state that they believe that it increases the candidate experience, that they get to prove who they are and not just being judged on a CV. But I mean, there's obviously going to be different reactions, but it's fascinating. And there's newer meta-analysis that finds the same structure, that structured interviews, super important, logic ability, super important, personality, super important. If we combine them, then we have something really beautiful. Like, we can't just rely on one singular method, obviously, but in like combination, it can really increase the likelihood of being right as often as possible when it comes to hiring. Which, to be fair, it's not actually that high in the end anyways. You're always going to have like false positives and false negatives, right? Like, I wish we could get rid of them all, which is, the benefit to having performance assessment on the job, so that you can, see how things are going, and, do things like organizational network analysis, not to toot our own horn, but other ways to have psychometrics on the job. I love it. All right. Yeah. Next, HR Speak Funny. So today's word is resenteeism. It's a combination of resentment and absenteeism. And it's a growing trend where employees continue working in roles they find dissatisfying because they either can't find a better suited job or think they won't be able to. It's an evolved version of quiet quitting in the age of mass layoffs. Not only are employees disengaged, but they are resentful about it. Have you heard of this term, resenteeism? No, I haven't. I don't know if there's a Swedish version. I need to look that up. But not really. But I mean, it's not, the concept is not new, I guess. It's more the term, and that there's actually a label for it. But I think it is really interesting what we have gone through with, before COVID, it was more the employer's market, and you'd had to be just like thankful for even getting to apply, and then COVID happened, and then this like massive hyper growth, and it was the candidates market, and the organizations should be happy if someone even applied. And then now back to this like, well, now it's the kind of organizations that have the upper hand again. there's such a shift in, I guess, confidence level, both for employees and for organizations. And when there is a mismatch in that, I guess confidence, then there will be implications. I think the implications when it was the candidate market was that people did anything to show how interesting they were, and they invested so much money in beanbags and ping pong tables to just like be that hip and cool workplace and having a higher purpose. And like all those things were great, but maybe it kind of turned into a little bit too much of like balloons and confetti more than actually like, this is what we're doing and we're going to be honest about what we stand for. And so I think there's this flip between who has the power. And now when it is less of a candidates market, at least for, there's still, certain groups, obviously, of job families where there's a lack of talent and competence. But then it's tough for a candidate to dare to take a jump and find something else. And that benefits no one.
Interesting. Yeah. It's interesting how sometimes we take for granted the kind of market that we might be in, and then things flip. It changes what we feel comfortable doing.
Yeah.
Fascinating. All right. Next, we are going to play Decline to Comment. So I'm going to give you 3 different questions, and you can decline to comment to up to one of them. And I won't tell you what order I'm going to ask them in, but we're going to start with the first one. So number 1, have you ever lied about or hidden the fact that you used AI in business? And if yes, what was the scenario?
I mean, I think it's almost the opposite, where sometimes I've written something myself and I've said that, no, I use ChatGPT and save time.
I love that.
So I think it's the other way around.
And tell me more about that. Is that because you think that they're gonna like actually be like, okay, now I respect this more because you used AI to help or something?
Just I work in a tech company where people are very like tech literate and AI literate, as much as you can be, and it's a given that you boost your own productivity with AI. And I enjoy writing. So sometimes if I'm going to write a memo or something, I'll just write it myself with my own brain.
Wow.
And then it's like,
so old school.
I know, who am I? But then it's like, yeah, of course I used ChatGPT to help me make this draft and correct it. And maybe I didn't.
I love that. I've never done that before. I've never thought the opposite, but maybe I'll inject that in when I'm like, all right. Yeah. Maybe then that gives you a little bit of like carte blanche if you're like, okay, this might have a bunch of typos and issues or something in it, and blame ChatGPT. I love that.
Exactly.
All right. Number 2, do you approve of your TA team ghosting job applicants?
I mean, no, of course not. But I can also understand that it happens. I think that one of the biggest challenges we have in our recruitment is that we have, our in-house TA team who really does like a lot of the job when it comes to hiring. The hiring managers are obviously part of the startup process, like this is what I want and for these reasons and all those things, and like this is what we should evaluate. But it's very, very driven by the TA. So up to like quite far into the process, when it comes to rejecting candidates, it's the TA that will handle that. But once the candidate has started like meeting the hiring manager, like investing more time with the hiring manager, we strive to have the hiring manager give the rejection feedback. And then that can create a bit of a, like, there's so much you're going to do as a hiring manager. Like, hiring is just one of your 10,000 things. And one of those rejection feedback notes or calls can slip your mind. So I think that's the biggest risk in our process, besides human error. So I think like, no, big no, it's not allowed. But we're
But it
human and
happens,
it
and we're human.
happens.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's fair.
Yeah.
All right. Next, do you think AI writes better resumes than most people?
Yeah, probably.
Oh, that's probably true though. Yeah.
Now I answered all of them.
You did. You didn't
Yeah,
decline any
yeah.
of them. So A+. Nice job.
Yes. Judgment.
Yes. Awesome. Well, Linnea, it's been wonderful chatting with you. Time to cheers to change together. So specifically today, we are cheersing to companies fighting climate change. So recent data from benefits consultant Mercer indicates that facilitating green and healthy commutes continues to rise as a benefits priority. Nearly 1/3 of companies aim to promote and facilitate eco-friendly modes of commuting for their employees. Bank of America, for example, interesting, is leading the charge and has pledged to more than double the availability of EV charging stations at its financial centers and has provided employees with up to $4,000 in reimbursement for a purchase of a new all-electric passenger car. So with that, cheers to change. Linnea, it's been lovely chatting with you. And
cheers,
man, enjoy that. Honestly, I'm envious of all of the awesome labor laws there. I mean, I want to, maybe I don't want to have a baby, but maybe I would if I lived in Sweden. So anyway, lovely chatting with you, and
thank you.
Have a great rest of your year. Cheers.
Yeah, you too. Thanks for having me. Bye.
All right. Bye.